Hey folks, my name is Girish, the host for Back to Basics, another Back to Basics for another week. We are going to be talking about empowerment and how stressful it is to not get over that. And there's a lot of people suffering out there with not to make the next move. And this person actually made the next move. And we will talk about his journey and what his journey is all about. And it's an amazing person that I spoke with. I've been speaking to him for the last, I don't know how many months now on Clubhouse. And his story was quite inspiring. And I said, you know what, let me rope him into this show. And he was excited about this show. And hopefully I am too. I know I am. So, guys, his name is Yash, and please welcome him to the show. Yash, how are you? And thanks for coming to Back to Basics.
Thank you very much, Girish. Extremely well, and really excited to be on your show. I've had the chance to go through your previous shows, and they're all have been pretty amazing. A lot of insights, and yeah, really excited to have a chat with you on here today.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you again for coming on the show. But before we get into the details of the show today,
Uh-huh.
what does Back to Basic mean to you?
Back to basics is extremely important to me, and I think it is as real as it sounds. It's as tough to actually get back to basics, but once you get back to it, it can change lives. So what I really mean by that is, uh, you know, life is not as hard as it's supposed to be. So it's much simpler in a lot of ways,
Mm.
but we tend to make it so convoluted and so complex in our own ways, in our own head. And we tend to get away from basics. So the basics of life is something that we all really understand and we all really know, but we tend to believe that this is too easy, this is too simple for a good life. And we tend to get into a sphere, we get into an area um, where it gets complicated, and we forget that how basics it was really leading our lives in the way that we expected it to be. So for me, back to basics is just to keep it simple. Understand that you already have what you're really chasing, and make the most of it.
Yeah, yes. Thank you again for understanding the mission of Back to Basics. And I think you and I are pretty much on the same page when it comes to the reality of Back to Basics, and we should be going back to basics on many different situations. So thank you again for coming on the show too. So
Thank you again.
yes, what does self empowerment mean to you, by the way?
Right. So yeah, self-empowerment is just not a word to me. It's an emotion. It's something which till the time I wasn't self-empowered, which what it means is that when I was not self-actualized, I couldn't identify with who I am. I was trying to identify myself with what people thought I was. The signs that I got from the outside world made me believe who exactly I am. So becoming self-empowered basically means is where your inner and energies and your internal self is basically powering your world, is actually running your world. So a lot of things that we're trying to find outside there actually exist within inside of you, and it's extremely important to spend time, energy to recognize that, to actually figure out that what exactly are you? Because when you're comparing yourself with the rest of the world, every single person is different. Every single person is unique. There's 7 billion unique lives running at the moment, right? So it's extremely important to at least identify with your own. So for me, self-empowerment means at least to identify what can I do personally, and forget what the rest of the world is doing at this stage, but at least identify what is it that gives me that happiness, that peace of mind, that that amazing sense of what life wants from me and what do I want from life. And these are difficult questions. These are extremely hard questions which we tend to go past because That takes a lot of time and contemplation to answer those questions. So to answer your question there, self-empowerment is extremely important to me, and I'm constantly doing it. It's just not one thing that you do one day and you close the chapter. It's a constant work and progress. You self-empower yourself every single time you get yourself stuck into a rut. So you need to then look inside and find that power, find that strength, find that courage to get yourself out of, the sticky situation that you're in, or if you are just not feeling yourself. So, and a lot to do with anxiety, depression, overthinking, over planning, all of that. When you get yourself stuck into that rut, you need to come back to basics, as you would probably put it. And for me, that is self-empowerment.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you again, Yash, for explaining what self-empowerment means to you and what does it mean in general. Um, so can you explain your story as to why I brought you here? Because it seems like your story inspired me quite a bit actually. And it hurt me
Right.
or hit me, I should say, with that inspiring story. Can you just explain to the audience what that is, please?
No worries, no worries at all. A lot of my power lies in my story, and I go out there and I share my story as much as I possibly can. So when I was born, I was born a very sick child. I basically had multiple issues, ranging from my skin condition to internal conditions, and it was in its own way, it was amazing for me to survive the first 3 months of my own life. So after making through that, my skin condition didn't really improve, and so I was going through a tough time with that. What that happened and what that did was, it basically, my internal growth was not as perfect as it was supposed to be, right? And that affected my speech in a massive way, leading to a crazy speech impediment, a really bad speech impediment where, back in school, for me to complete a sentence, I probably had to block it 3 times. It would take me an eternity to finish off a sentence, right? So speech was definitely one of the major issues of my life. And as we all understand, and especially you as a podcaster, you understand that how speech or speaking or communication is such a major part of our lives. It is, from the time we wake up to the time we go to bed, it's a major, major, major function. And so I was always left, you know wanting more, because there was so much, running in my head, and there were so many emotions that I wanted to share. But I became an introvert. I became somebody who I thought was not worthy enough to speak. And it's kind of, it's it's a very tough feeling to describe. It's a very tough feeling to actually put it in words. Especially when you're young and kids don't really know how to deal with people who have such issues, and you go through these, you know bullying at school, and bullying in other factors as well, like, within family in itself. You are expected to be the last one to talk, and you're expected to be the last one to speak. So, and I really wouldn't blame any single person in this world who's probably, subconsciously bullied me or didn't really know how to deal with it, because it is such a personal issue which a lot of people can't ever relate to. Now, looking at the way I speak right now, a lot of people might be, you know, wondering, is this story even true? But but it's taken me a lot of, um, what do you say? What's the right word? Again, it took me some sort of self-awareness. It got down to a point where I was probably suicidal at a age when I should really be, you know, going out with the prettiest girl at school, right? And it got to a point where I needed to figure out a way to basically deal with my problem. So what happened was, Girish, that I was young, but I was wise enough to understand that it's my problem and it's my solution. I need to find a solution out there. There's no one else that can possibly help me in the best possible way. And I started to figure out ways. to get better with my speech, and I used to practice. I used to read random newspapers and the books and just anything of my interest loud and clear, and speak it, and speak it like I'm the best speaker in the world.
Mm,
It's got to do a lot with mental conditioning. Now, I understand that everyone cannot probably. I mean, it sounds easier than it is, but you need to make it up first in your mind before it comes out of your mouth. So you need to, that strength needs to build up in your head before you even start taking the smallest of actions. Um, and just going forward, it did improve. It did improve, and then I kept putting myself in situations where I'm not supposed to be. I used to get on stage. I used to There was events that I used to host, and I used to block, and I used to get stuck. But then my confidence was so high that that took over everything else that I actually was struggling with.
mm,
um, you know, and I think I've had some amazing relationships. I've had some amazing friendships. So going forward, and then I'll end with what I really believe about it. Going forward, 7 years back, with all the stress and anxiety and everything that I've taken, in my past life, my body was suffering throughout, which I never realized. So our physical body, our internal organs, right? They are constantly struggling with all the anxiety and stress that we're going through, but we never see it, unfortunately, right? We only see the physical aspect of us. And I realized that I was struggling when I went to bed one night and woke up in the morning and waist below my legs weren't working. I
mm,
was actually paralyzed, and it took me a surgery the same night. They had to cut cut through my spinal cord and fix it because my spinal disc had disconnected in my sleep. Now it might seem in my sleep, but it's been struggling for years, right? Because every time we take some sort of stress and anxiety, it takes a massive load onto our spinal cord,
mm,
onto our spine, which a lot of people are not aware of. Anyway, took me a surgery the same night, and 3 months to learn how to walk again, get into a rehab, and I'm still working to get my feet as strengthened as possible. So I got for run. But coming from a point where I'd almost signed on a wheelchair for the rest of my life, to run about 10 to 15 kilometers now, on a regular basis, it's been quite a journey with that as well. So it's been a constant struggle with getting to know myself from a physical aspect, but that's made me into a person who is now so self-assured of himself, who is now so self-actualized, who is now so self-empowered. And I don't think there is anything in this world today that can bring me down. So hold and behold, that has been most of me, as I
yeah,
would like to
well,
put it.
this is the second time that I've heard this story, and it's still wow, no matter what how many times I hear it, it looks like. Regarding the skin issue and the skin problem that you had, okay, very briefly, was that a known issue from other people that they know that it's an issue and it's an easy fix, or you still have that issue?
I've still got that issue, but I mean, it stemmed from my family. So we kind of, I mean, it is something which can get passed on, and it did get passed on, unfortunately. I've got it, but it's very, very, very much under control again. As like my speech and my spine issue as well. It's again the choices you make. So to answer your question, yes, it is something which is which a lot of people around me know, and it still exists. But it's definitely really very, very well taken care of. It's really well managed. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you again. And then regarding the speech issue that you're having, right? At
Mhm.
what age do you think that it kind of got better? When you were in the adult age or the teenage age, or which age is that?
I would say probably adult. adulthood, I still had it, but I think I had it a lot more in my mind, in my head than I probably did. So it's a it's a thing that a lot of people don't talk about, right? Stuttering is something which is a major issue around, and especially how to deal with it mentally and emotionally is probably the tougher bit than how to deal with it physically,
Mm,
right? Because embarrassment is such an emotion, is such a thing that, till the time you don't really feel it as many times as you don't want to, you don't realize how much of a beast it is. It is such a monster, and when you have been mocked around, and you've been, you've people around you get uncomfortable with you, it becomes very hard for you to go out there and test the waters, to actually say whatever you want to without thinking about it. So just a quick example, there are I've got so many substitute words that you wouldn't even imagine. I would substitute words at the flick of my finger because I know I'm going to be approaching a word which I know I probably am going to get stuck with, and I'll substitute it. I don't do it anymore because that's not the best way to deal with it because you get used to it.
mm.
But I used to do that a lot, and I've stopped doing it because sometimes I don't make sense because I've
Yeah.
substituted words, and it's just taken the conversation into a different direction.
Yeah.
So
Thank you so much for that, by the way, Yash. So, but the reason why I asked that question is from the teenage and
sorry.
adult, right? Is do you think it's a gap that no one is really focusing on the kids, or is it too expensive for the kids? Or do we just focus saying that let them finish first and then we'll go to the adulthood?
That's a great question. I think kids, at least as to what I believe, because I do help kids with speech issues, they are more mature than we think that they are.
Hmm.
So even at the age of 7 or 8, they realize that there is a problem that they need to fix. And kids and parents, in a lot of ways, they basically tend to go, oh, they're not old enough, or they're not mature enough, or they're probably going to grow out of it, right?
Hmm.
Now, I personally believe it's extremely important to make them aware that there is an issue, there is a problem, and like every other kid has some issue or the other, and we need to try and figure a way out. Because if you don't fix it at the right time, it goes to a point where the child in themselves don't want to fix it. And they've
Hmm.
gotten so used to living like that, then they believe it's not going to get fixed. If they're not going to grow out of it, they believe this is what they're going to live with for the rest of their lives, right? And it's not expensive. It really depends how bad your speech is. So you need to at least have an initial speech therapy sessions to understand at the scale of 0 to 10, 1 to 10, where do you stand, right? And then constant work on their speech, constantly giving them that appreciation. Every time they block, keep your mouth shut.
Hmm.
Let them finish. Don't finish it for them. Don't let them know that they're not good enough to finish a sentence, right? um, every time they speak well for even 2 to 3 minutes, or if they've had 10 good sentences without a block, appreciate them. Give a pat on their back. Let them know, wow, that you made an excellent point and you spoke really well on that. These small things matter a lot more than these big speech therapy sessions. Now, those are just as important, but these regular work on your child's speech is very important, so it doesn't lead to adulthood, and then um, probably becomes even more difficult sometimes to
Of
fix it.
course, of course. Yash, I know that you are not an expert in, you know,
No,
yes, you are dealing with stuttering, but you're not the expert, right? But a very quick thing, is there a scaling thing that how do you know that what is worse and what is good?
um,
As a parent, I mean,
and
as a parent, if a kid uh,
yeah,
has a problem, how do we
yeah.
know that are they scale 20 or are they scale one?
All right, all right. Um, I think the parents should only understand a bit that their speech is not fluent. They're struggling to put the words together,
Mm,
or they're having issues with their breathing, because it's got to do a lot with breathing. There's some words which work with breathing very, very closely.
Mm.
And if they believe that's an issue, then they need to leave it to the speech therapist to actually put them on a scale, to actually let the parents then know that where exactly does the child. So I probably wouldn't say that the parents need to completely figure out for themselves that where do they stand on a scale of 1 to 10, but at least recognize the problem and not shy away from it.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Thank you again, Yash. Now, regarding your childhood, you said that you were bullied, okay, and you also were kind of in a suicidal stage also.
mhm.
Was the bullying really suffering for you when people were making fun of you? Because I think people, or I should say society, do make fun of each other when there is something wrong with someone or something is happening. Obviously, we should stop bullying because bullying is not good. But how did you feel at that time? Was that towards getting into suicidal, or was it suicidal for different reasons?
Yep, there are two parts to it. So bullying, I probably wouldn't say I was the most bullied person in the world, but definitely there are two sorts of bullying. One which happens on your face and you can actually see it, you can actually hear it, and then there is one which is probably silent bullying, where people wouldn't want to be friends with you as much, or or they're probably talking behind your back, or they're saying things which and sorry, silent bullying to me also basically means is the bullying happening in your own head. So you are actually making up stories for yourself that because I spoke like that, that's probably why this happened to me. So we got to be very careful if someone is actually watching your podcast or listening to your podcast, and if they have a slight speech impediment or they have a speech concern, be very, very mindful of the fact that you would probably might be thinking a lot more than it's actually happening in the world. And what I learned with life is people don't have the time to talk about you as much as we believe they do.
Mm,
So they on that particular second they might feel a bit uncomfortable, but they're going to move on, right? So don't overthink it too much. To answer your question there, Girish, um, yes, so childhood bullying was a bit tough, but I think I took it to another sphere in my head, and that led for me to be suicidal because I kind of felt that I didn't have a future. Uh, how would I basically go for a job interview? How would I do my work? The more the communication is required in this world, I will probably be a failure. I was doing okay at school, but I think it's just that extra thinking and overthinking made me feel like a loser a lot more than I was, and that led me to believe that what's the point of living?
mm.
So there's so many aspects to it, and it's but yeah. So there was bullying, but at the same time, it was me, myself, and I who was also struggling with my own identity.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Thank you again, Yash, for explaining that. Now, regarding the paralyzed issue that you have, and very briefly,
Sure.
is that coincidental or is that something happened and it's still going on? Obviously, it's still going on because you just explained that. But what was the cause of it, or any root cause of it, of that issue?
Yeah. So unfortunately, they couldn't find a root cause. It was one of the. It's not rare. It's starting to happen a lot more. And what the doctors explained to me was that our bodies were never meant to sit for this long. So the postures that we sit in, and this could be any person in the world, like someone who's basically spending a lot of time sitting in front of the computer, or in the car driving to work and stuff like that. Um, they need to realize that bodies were not meant to sit for that long. And for me, it was coupling up with obviously my speech issue, my anxiety, depression, all of that put together. My body did take a toll. So there were multiple factors to it, to my paralysis, and my body probably couldn't take it after a point, unfortunately. So but I'm definitely on the mend. I'm definitely on the mend. I do a lot of work on it. I do a lot of running. I go to the gym. I'm constantly trying to strengthen it. And so the trick isn't the work, isn't the action that you basically put in.
Yeah. I mean, I can talk about the skin issues that you had, the speeching issues you had, and then the bullying issue, and the suicidal issue, and the paralysis issue. I mean, you've gone so much, and you
Of course.
still are in the positive way whenever I speak with you every single day, or every single time whenever we're online. So thank you again for speaking to us about all the details of what you have gone through. And it's not easy, believe me, it's not easy, and it sounds easy because it's only a 30-40 minute call that we're having, but
That's
you
right.
have dealing with this for the last how many years now? And we won't get into the years because then they'll give away the age, but so, so before we leave the call today and end the call today and the episode today, do you have any last words for Back to Basics before we leave today? Because this story really needs to be heard in many different ways, right? And I'm
Yes.
glad that we went back to basics into those details. So, any
Yeah.
last words before we leave?
Yeah. I think what I'm going to end with is getting people to recognize their power, right? We don't even, by the time we are almost on a deathbed and we're about to leave, we haven't even scratched, most of it. And the only time you have is now. After waking up, being, paralyzed, I realized the value of time. So anyone listening to it and has got future plans, make it into a present plan. And at least start taking small actions. If you believe that I speak well enough for somebody who has a speech problem, or a massive speech impediment, that's because I took small actions. I took small actions to lead to the biggest result. Find that power within yourself. Be more aware of who you are. Constantly, all the actions that you're putting in, including eating that cake, which you probably could have avoided, is an action that you need to think about. It's a conscious decision that you make. Be aware of your actions, decisions, and thoughts. Um, so my plea to a lot of people out there, those who are struggling with anything, or they believe that they're stuck in a bit of a rut, um, recognize, identify it. Identify yourself, believe in yourself. Put in the extra efforts that you need to, then probably have any sort of result expectation, and ultimately how to sustain your life in the best possible way. So in the end, all I would say is, um, you know, there is so much that lies within us, but we are so shy to put ourselves out there and put in the right kind of action that we need to reach the result that we always strive for. And that's just the way I run, and that's the way I have improved my life from a point where I thought that I didn't even deserve to live. So if I can do it, any single person in this world can do it.
Yeah, thank you again for being who you are, and the stuff that you do, and the greatest self empowerment that you did. You and I would not have met. So, and I'm glad that you did that, and all power to you or whatever you're doing. So, thank you again, Yash, for being on the show and supporting me in the small journey that I have on my podcast. And thank you again for coming on season 2. So, thank you again.
Thank you very, very, very much, Girish. I think another way to share my story, and you're doing an excellent service. You're doing such an amazing job, by asking these questions, which people should be asking themselves. So I would like to thank you again.
Yeah, thank you again for being here and being a sport. Thank you again.
Cheers, Girish. Thank you
Cheers.
for the time.
So, guys, we spoke with Yash today, and we talked about the basics of, well, we talked about the empowerment, didn't we? And we talked about that it's life. Life is tough, but how do we get with it? Get away with that? I mean, if you look at it, and I'm going to read it here. He had skin issues. He has speech issues. He has, well, a little of reading issues. Well, no, he didn't. He had speaking issues, right? He also had bullying issues. He had suicidal issues. But then on top of that, after all that, he also had paralysis issues. So and he's still working on it. And I think he's doing great. So instead of losing hope, I think we should just look for hope on the new positive way. So as usual, as always, there's a quote of the day from Back to Basics, and then hopefully Yash will enjoy that quote of the day. The quote of the day is, "You're put on this earth to achieve your greatest self, to live out your purpose, and to do it courageously." Now, I hope that really makes sense and that sums up the whole episode, and I think it did. And I hope Yash agrees with that. And as usual, as always, what do I always say at the end of the episode? You know it, and I know it, but Yash does not know it. But everything in life goes back to basics, and that's what we did today, guys. Guys, take care. God bless. Keep on commenting as much as you can, good, bad, ugly, either way. It'll make my show stronger day by day, week by week. And your comment makes a difference. If it is bad, I will try to improve it as much as I can. But there are three things that this episode and this show is going well: is the content, the guest, and definitely the host. Guys, take care. God bless, and I will see you next week. Next week's episode on Back
a
to
link
Basics.
into the book so that I could talk about it and I could sell the book and pass on the legacy that he left me.
Yeah, it's very tough to pass on something from a different vision to a different vision. But then your story is from the outside of the box of how you think he thinks. Am I right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it was that. And then some of it was actual words from him because he did send me a document before he died. So what the story is this: my father was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer and was given like 2 years to live, basically. And during this time, he had a nurse, and his nurse was from Brazil. And so what they did was every morning my dad would wake up and she would be there. They would have breakfast and he would talk about his stories to her and she would type them. So I literally got like,